Welcome back to Morning Express. It is now 7 o'clock and it's time for The Way It Is. I'll introduce the panel that we have here this morning. To my extreme left, we have Senator Omar Hassan, who's the Senator for Mombasa County, also the Secretary General for Wiper Movement. Welcome, sir, and good to have you.
Thank you very much.
I hope you had a good weekend.
Excellent weekend.
Okay.
A lot of things happening. More friends getting married. The Bohara community leader visiting us in Mombasa. You have quite a large following in there with a very disciplined community in terms of organization. So it was a fairly
good weekend.
Good weekend.
All right. Next to him we have Honorable Irongo Kangata, who is a member of Parliament for Kiharo constituency. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you.
And karibu sana. Now, Moses Kajwang, Senator Moses Kajwang, who is a senator for Homa Bay. Good to have you, sir.
Nice to...
And karibu sana. It's been a while since we had you. I think you've been very busy.
Yeah, I've been quite busy and doing lots of things. This weekend I was in Eldama Ravine. Of all the places, I led a strong delegation coming from the 4 Nyanza counties to a funeral of a very senior chief in Eldama Ravine. And the reception was overwhelming. And we told the community there to come back to their first love, which is Raila Odinga.
We'll come to those matters, politics, in just a bit. Last but not least, we have Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Karibu sana. Now, maybe on a lighter note, and just to get what you're feeling, or I don't know if any of you had bought a ticket for Kofi Olomide's concert. Senator Omar Hassan, were you planning to attend the concert? And maybe, do you think that the authorities were too harsh on him?
Facts, if I said what I said, maybe Kenyans will not like me. If you want to just put me off, just put on Lingala and whatever it's called.
That's not your style.
It's not my thing. So if, the only reason I noticed Kofi Olomide was in town is because I'm told he used coffee. and a flying kick. But outside that, I think the authorities were extremely lenient on him. First and foremost, he was only arrested based on public pressure. There was a lot of pressure that came from almost all dimensions, including the National Gender and Equality Commission. And therefore, they felt finally they needed to act on it. I saw his interview on Citizen TV. Kofi needs to realize that Kenyans are said to be some of the most educated Africans, and with human resource that we export. For him to sit down and try to translate for us what the lady was saying and what he was doing,
it was non-consequential given what he did.
And then I think I think the deportation was a lenient way of dealing with him. Okay. Should have been charged with assault first and foremost, principally, because I'm told he's in the business of beating people. I've been reading that somewhere. And I think, in fact, the fact that he did that with such audacity and such ease and casual manner, you know when somebody usually does something and gets away with it so casually. So he just thought he could hit the lady and get away with it and just go ahead with his normal thing. But I think
although one might argue that it's happened previously in Kenya and there didn't seem to be that much pressure on those.
Well, I had people talk about Kidero. You see, just because something was not dealt with at a certain point does not justify us not dealing with another matter. Yeah. So what happens is the Kidero issue, I think, rested with the police. There was a claim and a counterclaim. Shebesh said she was assaulted. Kidero said he was punched at the wrong places. So. And even went to this hospital to take a P3. So I think.
All right.
I think we should not compare Olomides and Kideros. It is a height of insult for me to come to your house and do the things I do in my house. Kideros and Shebesh was basically Kenyans, first and foremost. It was bad, but Kenyans. Now imagine a visitor coming here and behaving the way Olomide behaved. I thank God that he behaved like that. At this time when we have a crisis in our schools, the dance he was bringing, the message he was bringing would have affected us for another 10 years. Bob Marley was here, I think, once. Like Dube was here once. And children, people went ja, ja, ja for years. So the new dance he was bringing, had he just had a chance to put it on our TVs, our children would be dancing for another 10 years. It was just good that he behaved like that, and we threw him out, never to come back again.
Okay, all right, let's move on to other things. And you wanted to comment on that. All right, maybe he's a fan.
I like Koffi Olomide's music, and he's been very consistent, and is an extremely gifted and successful artist. Africans should embrace Africans. It should not just be that when someone from the US comes, we go gaga over that person and not appreciate our neighbors from Africa. Secondly, yes, it was the height of impropriety for Koffi Olomide to behave in the manner in which he behaved. In fact, this should open up debate on gender-based violence. It should not be that his deportation should be the end. Because there's a lot of gender-based violence going on in this country. There is the case of Kidero. There are many other cases. In fact, Kenyans are hypocrites. That's why when I say you don't come to my house and do things in my house, as if he is entitled to beat his wife and to beat his dancers in his house. That is the hypocrisy that Kenyans have. That when a visitor comes and does something that looks funny, we are in unison in condemning them. But then we go back to our homes and kick our wives and punch our wives and fight with our political competitors. I think Kenya, there's something rotten in Kenya.
There's something wrong.
Well, can I just comment that personally I find something funny in Congolese music culture, where the musicians from that country, they are really flamboyant, they are really into fashion. Taking into account they come from a very poor country, I usually find that disconnect between the artist and the people quite not very appealing, as compared, let's say, for instance, with other some musicians from, let's say, Caribbean. They usually look as if they are representing their constituency. To me, I always find that difference very weird. Because you come here with a lot of
one might argue and say it is where you find gold, so, you know, and that's just their style. They're flamboyant by nature.
You see even in Kenya, music is not as big. A Kenyan wants to go sari everywhere. You know, we're a culture of free things. You know, you are able to get you are told somebody's coming here, 1,000 shillings for your artist is too much. You want to dub, you know, or to copy the CD rather than go and buy one. But you go to Uganda, somebody can pay 10,000 Kenya shillings to go and listen to Chameleon. So therefore, it's big in those countries. So if that is the industry that is thriving and it's making people look have some bling, I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
But you see, for instance, when I was young, I used to be a great fan of people like Pat Shange, the musician from South Africa, people like Chico. But later on, I later realized these people were not making sense, in the sense that their country was under oppression. How come they're just talking about love? Why can't they talk about oppression? It's weird.
Well, I guess different musicians do different things, but let's move away from music, because I'm sure we can have this debate till evening if we give it a chance. But let me come to you, Moses Kajwang, Senator, and this is to do with the cracks that seem to be emerging in the CORD coalition. And given some of the statements that were made, we had Wetangula, Moses Wetangula, not too long ago, I think it was on Friday or Thursday, mentioned that it is time that Raila accepted that he would not be able to be the best candidate for CORD, and therefore allow either Kalonzo or Wetangula. Possibly your sentiments on that?
Yeah, Mike, I think what is going on in CORD is normal for any coalition, and what makes it newsworthy is the fact that the CORD coalition has held on for so long without cracks. It is not easy to have a coalition of parties in the opposition holding on for 3.5 years, going into 4 years, in opposition, and facing a ruling coalition like Jubilee that is bent on using money and using all strategies to scuttle the opposition. Mike, if you recall the first 1 or 2 years following the ascent to office of Jubilee, CORD coalition had been written off. People were saying the opposition was dead, that the opposition was toothless. The CORD coalition has maintained its relevance, has kept the government on toes, and has held together 3 principles within a coalition that is in opposition without the privileges associated with, with being in power.
Okay.
And so when it gets to a point where we are heading into the next elections, the three principals, each of them feel they've got an equal right to be elected or to be selected as a flag bearer for the coalition. Moses Wetangula has launched his presidential bid, and I attended his presidential bid, even though I am in ODM and is in Ford Kenya. We expect that Raila Odinga and even Kalonzo Musyoka will launch their presidential bid. We in CORD, we are working on internal arrangements for ensuring that we select or elect one person who will carry the flag of the coalition. Remember, when Uhuru carried the flag for Jubilee, he went in as TNA. There was nothing like Jubilee. And so once we settle on our presidential flag bearer, all of us are going to rally behind him. What is going on is healthy. It is internal democracy. People are saying, Wetai is saying, I'm good enough. And it is up to Raila and Kalonzo also to state their cases. There is nothing unusual or extraordinary.
All right. Ambrose Weda, do you agree that it is a healthy democracy that is playing out there? And given that we only have slightly over a year to go before the 2017 election, that it is time, it's literally just looking for the best flag bearer.
Remember last week on this program I said, wait for a major announcement from Weta, I will be leaving. The next one, the major one, will be coming from Kalonzo Musyoka leaving. You look at
when you say leaving, you mean leaving the coalition or what?
Definitely. It is obvious. You look at the Kambas. I live in Cumberland, and I preach a lot in Cumberland. They are not going to take in Raila as the next candidate. I can see it. There are certain blunders that the CORD leader, Raila Odinga, is doing that is not in consonance with sustained democracy within their CORD and even coming as a candidate.
What blunders are those?
Last week you saw him going to Western, chest thumping all over and insulting people all over there, to the exclusion of their son, Wetangula. Actually, that is what seemed to have annoyed Wetangula so much. Sometimes basic courtesy, where you say, my brother, I'm going to Western, there's this small man called Ababuna Mwamba, I'm going to deal with him. Please, let's go together as a united force. He said, stay aside. I just want to show you your people love me more than they love you. That immediate result was what Wetangula was saying, to hell with you. Ababu was saying, to hell with. And if you looked at the tour, which I also had said was wrong at that time, it was a mistake. The bigwigs were not there. It was just the coast represented by Senator here and Governor. But the sons of the region were not there. Looking at it, Raila is basically preparing himself to run alone. You can see his footsteps. He's already putting aside Kalonzo Musyoka, is already putting aside Wetangula, and he seems to have seen that a time will come when he'll run alone. And knowing that he doesn't go to elections under the same banner, the same party, he changes after every elections. Chances that he will not go back as CORD is very high, going by history, going by his footsteps now. So it's not about internal, it's about realignments. And the sooner you are realigned, the better.
All right, let's hear from Senator Omar Hassan. You are there for the trip. Is it true that he actually sidelined Wetangula?
First and foremost, let me qualify this. We said every coalition partner has the inherent right to have his own political or their own political activities to popularize the party. That it is okay for Wetangula to launch his presidential bid as Ford Kenya. It is okay for ODM to have its Western tour and any other tour, including if they want to revisit to Kambani. It is okay for Wiper Democratic Movement to have its own set of activities, including popularization of the party, strengthening its membership base. So therefore, the respective identities of the parties do still exist. And therefore, first and foremost, that is the fundamental driving principle. Whether Raila was right or wrong to have requested his colleagues to join him on board is a matter of discussion. But I know that he did invite me. He asked me if you can find time to come to Western, and I did find time, and I did go to Western. And when I went there, I could notice that all was not lost for the CORD coalition, much in the same way we try to paint it at the national level. The one thing I will not allow in how we drive our politics, personally, there are so many biases and stereotypes that exist against all the presidential candidates. I know a set of things people say about Kalonzo. I know a set of things that people say about Weta himself. I know a set of things that people say about Raila. If then it is true that Raila can only win if he says somebody else tosha, then if he cannot win, then it is true that also he cannot win when he says somebody else tosha. Because, I mean, when you drive that narrative, you're giving fodder to adversaries. If Raila is weak as Raila Odinga, then Raila is weak when even he says somebody else tosha. Because there's the political support you want him to transfer. If he cannot lead him to victory, then he can lead nobody else to victory. Mm-hmm. So I think what we need to do is to be fair. Because also, as we toil this journey, also we realize he also brings his own capital. I urge a lot of caution even within the Wiper Democratic Movement in terms of how we address our allies. If the Luos then also say, we're not going to accept anybody else, much in the same way what Weta is saying, probably Campbell is saying, will not accept anybody else, then the coalition is doomed. Politics and active political competition is about compromises. Right. So if everybody holds on to a position that we shall not allow the other community to do so, then we are running on the wrong what do you call this? On the wrong path. But I believe an attack on one principle on another must be avoided. I think it's unfair.
Do you view Wetangula's statement as an attack on Raila?
I think...
Is that discorded?
You see, for what happens, it's healthy political competition, as one would put it. We've seen a very bruising contest between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. We've seen a bruising political contest between Ted Cruz and Trump. Everybody wants to focus or project themselves, but don't ruin the inherent basis these people come with, because these bases, even if I personally believe any cord candidate is marketable enough in terms of electoral victory. So let us not undermine our own strengths internally. Okay. So let's be very careful in how we advocate. That's why you even hear the Republican Party, or for instance the Democrats, calling for certain restraints in terms of personal attacks, in terms of whatever political machinations that you make. So I am one person who's not persuaded by the narrative. If Raila can't win, then even Raila Tosha can't win. If Raila is strong, the coalition is strong. If Wetangula is strong, the coalition is strong. If my party leader is strong or Wiper is strong, the coalition is strong. So let us not play into the biases and the stereotypes and the innuendos that are being peddled out there by our adversaries, advising us how we should do our politics.
Okay. Irungu Kangata, possibly your comments on what is going on in CORD?
Whatever is happening in CORD has no impact at all on Jubilee probability of winning. So therefore, it's neither here nor there. And I can tell you the reason. Since the year 1992, when multi-party was reintroduced in this country, there has been a certain trend. When you look at the elections results of 1992, 1997, 2002, the two referendums of 2005, 2010, the elections results of 2007 together with 2013, one thing is very clear, that indeed the voting bloc of Central Region is very strong. It only requires just one other region to support it for it to win. So, to me, if I was a person who was strategizing for CORD, my best effort would have been probably to split it up, to split Central Kenya and probably the Rift Valley. That has not happened. So that then means it does not matter whether you bring Wetangula, whether you bring Kalonzo, whether you bring Raila, is neither here or there. Jubilee is going to win. In fact, what is now happening in CORD, I would imagine, I think it is a realization that they will not defeat Jubilee, whichever candidate comes into place. So I would imagine some of them are now strategizing to join government. I think for a person like Wetangula, probably that one he can wait, because he's a senator, he is still active in political space. But for a person like Kalonzo Musyoka, it does not make sense for him to remain in CORD. Why? Because he does not have any political seat. No wonder, I'm told, there was effort to kick out a certain nominated member of parliament for Kalonzo to come in. I think that one doesn't make sense. It does not augur well for his position. the best strategic interest for him is to join our coalition. Now that is now very clear that neither of the candidates in court can defeat Jubilee. And for Raila Odinga, I think it makes sense for him to continue becoming a good opposition leader. It's helpful for our country because by doing so, he checks any bad things we may be doing. So therefore, for him, I think he can remain as...
So you think he only qualifies to be a good opposition leader and not the president of this country?
Well, he can become the president of this country, but the question is about what strategy is he employing. All factors, all indications are clearly that he's going to be defeated. And therefore, I think his strategy has always been to remain as a good opposition leader.
Okay.
Can I say something? Because it's very material for me. Two Jubilee stalwarts have talked about Kalonzo Musyoka shifting base. We are not stupid as a party. We are men and women endowed with sufficient capacity to make certain analogies and analysis and decisions. What useful value is Kalonzo Musyoka to Jubilee? One, first and foremost. On what position does he join in? What does he go to become in Jubilee?
Speaker.
Minority. Who said he wants to be Speaker of the country? He wants to be President of the Republic. He has. You see, those are the kind of condescending, attitudes. You see, this when Irungu here sits down and says, the central vote is very strong, so we only need maybe one extra block. Those are some of the things when people that incense a public outrage out there. Yeah, this is a country we're trying to build here. It's not a question of balkanization that you look at your vote and say who's the top up. Therefore, Rift Valley, for the purposes of 2017, our numbers make sense because Rift Valley is already topping us up. So I think Kalonzo Musyoka is Ghanaian for president. For me, as Hassan Omar, I'm supporting Kalonzo Musyoka for nothing else, apart from being on a presidential ticket. If he wants to go and become majority leader in Jubilee, then that means the party will have to make its own decisions differently, because the party is out for political power. The party is out to join a coalition or a partnership that makes sense and gives oomph in terms of competition for power. We do not want to go into a place where the shop is closed for the next 20 years. That you have William Ruto, and then after William Ruto, you probably have Kiraitu Murungi.
Okay.
So it's not going to happen.
Let me correct some impression here. The Jubilee Coalition is looking for every vote and every leader. And our prayer on a daily basis would be if Honorable Raila Odinga, the court leader, we joined together into one united nation, looking in one direction. No single conglomeration of communities would be able to win. That we are very clear about in Jubilee. In 2007, Mheshimiwa Kibaki had the Gema. He was still tossed out. Even in the last elections, the gap was less than 800,000. So that realization is that the Jubilee wants every person. And that's why you can see the deputy president and the president trying to work very hard to make certain achievements. The railway is being fast-tracked. Several other things are being done. The computers, the laptops, so that more people embrace Jubilee. It is never on the basis that one community just is an extra. That may be private Muranga discussions where Mheshimiwa comes from. But as members of Jubilee, like myself, I do not think he represents that kind of arrogance. Is not for us in Jubilee.
Yes, Moses.
A Jubilee member from Kisumu County and a Jubilee member from Muranga County. Sometimes politically you read between the lines and you can tell who maybe had the last access to the president. I think it is Irungu in this case. And that's why
our president doesn't behave like
I leave it to the public gallery. But there are two types of politics that we must avoid in this country. The politics of exclusion, the one where Irungu says that Central Province just needs one other community to top it up. In fact, it's just to top it up. In other words, they say they can do it, but they just need someone to top it up. That's a politics of exclusion we must avoid in this country. We are being given a narrative that 2017 is already won, and 2022 they are going to hand it over to somebody else from a community that has supported the Central Kenya majority community. What then do they expect other communities to look forward to? What about the Somalis, the Ogieks, the people from coast, the people from communities that have never tasted power, that have never known what it is to be Nairobi and to rule a nation? That is a kind of narrative that I can tell you that if you're confident you're winning these elections, I'm happy that you have that confidence, because you'll be drunk with that confidence and we are going to defeat you. The second type of politics we must avoid is a politics of the stomach. This thing of looting state resources and then using them close to elections to entice gullible or to entice politicians with huge financial debt and with huge obligations, close to elections, bringing cash, splashing it all over the place, opening harambes. You've got a situation where a deputy president and a president goes around doing harambes. And yet these are guys entrusted with 85% of Kenya's revenues. They're supposed to be bringing development, not coming with brown envelopes to do harambes and to bribe Kenyans. But thirdly, Mike, it is the issues in CORD that people keep focusing on. We forget that in Bomet, which is a Jubilee stronghold, the governor is now running around with something called Mashinani Development Party. In the neighboring county of Kericho, the governor, the professor, is also saying this thing we are being told to get into Jubilee, we are not going to get into it. You go to Nakuru, you've got people like Zakayo Cheriot who have rebelled against Jubilee. You go to Meru, you've got Governor Munya. When these people speak, they are rubbish, that those are non-entities. And yet when someone like Ababu or Otuoma speaks in the CORD coalition, it is as if the gods have spoken. If you look at the problems in Jubilee, I can tell you they are bigger. And with this merger of Jubilee, in fact, if it's Weda who advised them to get into one party, that was the best thing that has ever happened to the CORD coalition. Because one party means that there'll be so many people who will be running for the same positions at the constituency, at the ward, and at the county levels. And inevitably, only one person is going to get the nod of the party. The rest are going to go into other parties. We expect a serious windfall. In fact, this time round, I'm sure that even ODM is going to get seats in central Kenya as a result of that single party dictatorship.
Kangata, obviously things are not that rosy in Jubilee as much as we'd like to say, or as much as there's a narrative that things are, you know, the boat is rocking in CORD. Jubilee is not doing any better.
No, it is doing much better compared with CORD. And there's a lot of resistance from within, though. Looking at the party that they were supposed to have done, what, is it a year ago? And it still has not happened, and it doesn't look like it's about to happen. No, you see, there are two issues which are being raised by those people who are rebelling in Jubilee. The issue is about whether people should come together into one party. But then again, it appears there is no one who is doubting as to whether Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, together with his deputy, should be supported in 2017. Compare that with what is happening in CORD. A person like Ababu Namwamba is clearly saying he does not support the candidacy of any CORD leader. So therefore, there is a key difference when you compare that one with CORD. Again, and when you look members of parliament like Mr. Waluke, there are people who are criticizing Raila Odinga as a person. But no one, whether Mr. Munya, whether Bomet governor, is talking ill of our president. So therefore, that is the key difference. Number two, it is true, I agree that we shall be looking for each and every vote, that we should not balkanize any part of this country. In fact, all factors remaining constant, it appears this time we are going to win with 70%, which is very good, and I am happy with the kind of strategy that is being employed by our president. But then again, when you look, when we want to analyze this topic called politics, you have to look at it as it is, not as it ought to be. We all know the voting patterns of Kenyans. It is something I agree that should be changed. But then again, unless you want to bury your head under the sun, you have to agree how our Kenyans vote. It's not desirable, but it's factual. Finally, the idea of us coming together as one political party is born out of the objective of a good country. A good country really has 10, 15 parties which are strong. People tend to coalesce around one or three parties. Look at UK, look at United States, look at Australia. But this notion where you have about 10 parties, it doesn't make sense. So therefore, when we come together as a party, we are encouraging our brothers to consider that option also. If they don't want to do that, by the way, it is to their own detriment. When we shall have one party, it is going to guarantee that if you want to ascend to power through the two key Jubilee voting blocks or with the supporters of Jubilee, you have to pass or go up through that political party. We are going to define our ideology on economics, on politics, on sociology, as opposed to them. They say they have a distinct ideological outlook, but rarely have you ever seen them champion that ideological outlook.
Okay.
You don't champion. You see, when you're a practicing Muslim or Christian, you don't have to say it. Your values demonstrate it. The people you're talking about, some of them toiled for this country well before you were conceived. So when if you don't have a sense of history, you cannot know what political faith one professes. Because you see, when you still think of the mechanics through ethnic, engineering, then it is difficult to see that there is an ideological incline, and you first have the ideology before you have the party. So you come into terms of a shared value. There are very constant shared values in the Jubilee coalition: ethnicity, corruption. So it can be a shared value. It's not a contradiction. But so when you talk about ideological contestation or who's criticizing who, this country, even the conceptualization of the Political Parties Act, envisaged that the spirit was to avoid what you see with the Babu, to avoid what you're seeing with Mungaro in the coast region or Mutua here, so that governments in Africa tend to decimate the opposition. And I'm very worried, even of a weak opposition. I'm worried of a weak opposition even in the advent of a court government, because a strong opposition is necessary for us to nurture our democratic development. When I was talking to people over the weekend and I was telling them, look at when was the last time you had anything extraordinary about what Irungu said in the National Assembly? Largely because they just have the numbers to vote. So I'm hoping that we will not increase the numbers for Jubilee, but we will even the numbers in terms of the opposition and the ruling coalition. Or even, because in fact, if CORD today were in government, that's the need for an even stronger opposition, because of the strong character of the CORD leadership and their sense of political longevity. You can imagine an opposition where Duale is leader of minority, or we have to contend with Irungu. That we vanquish that opposition. So we need an opposition that is extremely strong.
When you say you have to bear with them, what do you mean? Are you saying they're not capable of having an opposition?
I mean, there is need for a strong opposition in this country, because when a court government is a strong government, when you have a Raila or Kalonzo, the Wetas and Hassan Omar is in that government, you need extremely a strong opposition. I can tell you, if you look at the characterization of the political conduct of majority of those who are now in Jubilee, that's an opposition you decimate overnight. So that's why even when we're trying to build a strong opposition, it is for the sake of this nation. It's not just about CORD being in the opposition at this moment in history. It's about the nation having. So look at counties like Mombasa. Unfortunately, there is a one-party county assembly. As much as it is my coalition, it is nauseating. So you realize then you need democracy needs checks and balances. You cannot run a Kanu prototype of politics and expect results. So what happens is for me now, when all these people are enticed by a narrative of development, who have not internalized the constitutional dispensation, was exactly to do the opposite. That it's a country or a government is under obligation to develop your area, notwithstanding which part of the political divide you stand on. Is a country that people or a leadership that refuses to mature itself to that democratic aspiration. So I think for me, all said and done, we have an obligation to this country to build a strong opposition. And when you think it is proper now to allow the Mutuas of this world to do what they're doing, you're weakening, a very important constitutional, provisions for telling us that you need one country, so you need one big party. Countries are built on values. Countries are built on diversities. Countries are built by institutional strength, no matter what the diversities are.
All right, Embusod, I see you shaking your head.
I think the opposition seems to be giving up. And it's very unfortunate, because they are now crying, we are being decimated, money is being poured. I don't know who's pouring money. I don't think the president is distributing money to anybody. Arambes, I still maintain they are very good, especially for churches. Churches do not share CDF.
Regardless of where that money comes from?
They earn salaries, 2 million, 1 point something million, allowances. If you take the president and the deputy, this 500,000 they would give here and there in this church, and it will be a big contribution. It's not a big deal. And they're also business persons, big business persons, that they know. What they should appreciate is that the team that they have assembled are not essentially people who are used to the desert of opposition. Take Kalonzo Musyoka. He's been in government throughout his life. It's only through association with Raila that has been cast into the desert of opposition. Wetangula, take him, he has been in government throughout. His only association with Raila has been into that desert. And most people. So these people, when they see a prolonged stay in the desert, you don't need to buy them. They are simply saying, this desert, Raila and these people are used to it. But us, we are not. So we are making arrangements to leave. It is not that anybody is buying them. Somebody like Omar, my brother senator here, has also been in opposition and is strong about it. He may find it very difficult being in government for long. He'll start opposing the very government. So it is orientation. The majority of those who are in court now, majority save for Honorable Raila Odinga, have been oriented in government over the years. So when they find themselves in places where they don't have power and they are not being bowed for in the villages, they want to change alliances. So they claim they are being bought. They are coming on their own. Where Tai is coming on is either wants to be president or to be in government. He said it clearly that you're better off not losing alone. You're better off being in a winning team. So he is coming on his own because that is where his umbilical cord has been cut. Government and government lagis.
All right.
Can I say this, please?
Let me hear from
I see Weta's letterheads, and I keep saying this every day. Weta drives a GK car. GK means government of Kenya. He's no way out of government. The people of Bungoma have a government right at Bungoma. Therefore, this is a fallacy to say that anybody is not in government. His letterheads have the coat of arms, says Republic of Kenya, the Senate. So everybody, somewhat, is in government with different opinions. I am in government with a different opinion of how government should run. So to entice this Moi politics of kujeni kwa serikali ama muingie kwa upinzani, after all, to now tell Irungu, to remind him of a sense of history, when there's bad government, you need to fight it. Moi excluded the Kikuyus for the years he was president, and Kikuyus organized themselves in the opposition, just for you, and they became a very important and dependable bloc in the opposition ranks of politics. So therefore, there is nothing wrong being in the opposition for as long as you know how to organize yourself.
Right. Okay.
Mike, I just wanted to say that the issue of public
officers
officers and ethics, that sets some requirements for public officers to act in a certain way when it comes to issues of giving contributions, participation in Harambes, and things that could look like outright bribery. And whether, as a lawyer, really cannot come here and say that the president and his deputy have got enough money, so there's nothing wrong when they splash that money. These guys, we put them in leadership to manage the national revenues and to bring about equitable development. There can be no defense to the kind of actions we see where the deputy president goes every other weekend dishing out cash where the source is not established. There's nothing wrong fundraising for churches. People do that with lower incomes. My parents do that. They're just farmers, but they support churches. But when you use state resources for that, there is something fundamentally wrong. And also, on the issue of that some people are used to being in government, Omar has clarified it very well. I'm also in government. I'm also a member of government by virtue of the fact that I'm in the legislature. But I'm holding a different opinion. But Wetangula and Kalonzo have been out there for 3 years going into 4 years. Now, what tells Weda that the last 1 year is going to be impossible for them? These are people who have reiterated their commitment. They've said, Kalonzo himself has said, he'd rather be a sweeper in CORD than to be in Jubilee. What else does Weda expect Kalonzo to say? I think it is proper to dream and to wish. But I think these are the wishes and dreams that sometimes when God does not respond to. I think you are the one who's going to wait for a very long time before some of these things happen.
I want us to move on to something else, and I'll come to you, Irungu Kangata. And this is another issue that we have in the country, and that's to do with the school unrest. There just seems to be something going wrong. Wilson Sossion has come out to say that maybe schools need to be closed early. We have all sorts of ideas coming through. We have Ekwe Thuro coming out to say that possibly we need to bring back caning, so, alluding to the fact that it could be an issue of indiscipline.
Yes, personally I strongly believe this is not a simple issue. We need to tackle it in a holistic manner. I would suggest, for instance, number one, we need to become more punitive. I agree, it is true. It appears we have changed how we deal with our children, and therefore I would propose probably we become more punitive. Those people who are burning, they should be taken to court and punished. And any person who sells paraffin or even petrol to young children should be punished appropriately. Because I would imagine they're obtaining this thing outside the school, and it appears no one has been arrested insofar as selling petrol to the children is concerned. Number two, I would also propose, for instance, we come up with mechanism of checking how principals manage these schools. It appears the management is very weak. We have principals who don't interact with children, who don't establish good communication channels with their children, and therefore there is a gap between children and also the leadership of the institution. And to that extent, again, if we find such kind of principals who are managing our schools, they need to be removed or even demoted or even kicked out of the school. Again, finally, we must also understand the subculture of our young people. If you recall when you were in high school, people used to celebrate the so-called rude boys. Those people who are bullying others, they were being celebrated. Myself, one of the things that I disliked very much in my life was when I was in Form 4. I don't think I used to treat Form 1s very well. And to that extent, when I look at that subculture, I think it was a very bad subculture. As to how it needs to be changed, I think I would ask our sociologists to give us how to change a subculture of teenagers, because I think it was what we call anomie. Anomie is a situation where people celebrate bad things. Okay. You celebrate individualism. When you bully somebody, people, they are very happy. And by the way, I think that is the principal cause of these riots. I'm told when one school burns, this other school, they say, hey, you people, you are not very wise. How come everyone is burning and our school is not?
Enough. Senator Omar Hassan, what do you feel is the core of the issue with our schools right now, given that they're literally going in flames one after the other?
I think it's the overall decay of almost all institutions of our society. Bad leadership, a vacuum in leadership. I don't think we can be a country that is unable to handle its own young people. It's like a parent failing in his home or in her home. So I think what happens is it's a question of values. And you know, people think this. I think it's the failure of parents. It's the failure of government. It's the failure of institutions of our republic, including the faith-based institutions that have all been co-opted into a litany of, a cacophony of looters. So I think and the problem is not as big. It's a question of a shift. It just requires a shift, because they reflect us as a society. They do exactly the things they see us doing. When we think that you can steal and things just there are no consequences for it. The culture of impunity.
You talk about leadership, and I mean, there was a narrative that sometimes they are also watching the political class.
Absolutely. And, I mean, that's why you have to be of best behavior. That's why the Constitution of late places an obligation of public servants to be of best behavior during official and unofficial times. Because even at unofficial times, you wonder, when do you cease to be the senator of Mombasa? When are the youth not looking at you, inhaling bangi? These things of that nature. So
you're sitting on the pavement.
When are they sitting on the pavement? Yeah. That's picketing. It's provided for in the Constitution. It's a legitimate arm of protestation. You can come and even sit outside Parliament. You can sit out at the State House.
And one might say that's what they are watching.
But if they had issues, And if they start they picketed in their school, they will not ban. Picketing does not ban. So they just if they started picketed in terms of what they saw with respect to some of the protests that the coalition had.
Solutions. So you talked about leadership. Possible solutions. What do we need to do to have our schools come back to law and order?
I think if Americans and other countries don't cane their kids. So for us, I think it's a bit shadoof to think that caning is about having all stakeholders playing their part in terms of inculcating values. It begins at the family level. You're taught not to steal, you're not taught not to burn, you're taught to respect your property, you're taught to respect the property of others. So I think there's a need for almost a value change in terms of radical. And then in terms of now, what you're doing is accurate in terms of public advocacy. To have role models go to these schools, to have people, yourselves in the media talk about these issues, to have, you can come together as media personalities and start to do things that tend to reach out there and say, today Michael Gitonga is not in jail and is in KTN because he did not ban his school. And when you ban your school, you become ignorant because you have nothing to read from. Right. And so place emphasis on the right things and give the young people the right messages and take to them role models who they can emulate. People who show that it's not about bling and pomp, it's about values and hard work.
Okay. Empress Sweda?
Yes, I think I would call that there is a very bad spirit going around among our children, especially in our schools. This spirit of banning is not something you deal with physical, something that has gone deep, and coupled with the fact that our brother Matiang'i also came and kicked God out of schools, kicked out role models out of school, and then kicked out forms of dialogue out of school and made orders. It's making it worse. As I look at it, and the solutions we need first, we need our re-amend our relationships with God, the parents themselves to pray for their children, counsel their children, talk to their children. We need a board of management. I am privileged to chair one of the biggest schools in this country, Jakaj Girls, with about 2,000 girls. Every morning I say a prayer on their behalf, that they may be quiet, their spirits may be settled. Apart from that, we have a deeper mechanism of dialogue. In my board of management meetings, the students are there. They make contributions. We don't make decisions without them. And then I also spare time with others. We talk to them. And actually, when you see when you hear what they say, some of the things they say are very legitimate. Very, very. So we must open up dialogue. Have it constantly. Constantly here means, like now, because of the pressure we have, so I've asked some of my board members, almost every week, one of us must pass in there, sit on and listen. So, and then thirdly, Matiang'i and his team, they need to relook at this in a more sober, more open, not in a dictatorial manner that he's doing. That one will worsen the situation. He should be more accommodative, listen to the teachers. He made a remark, he made a statement that makes it more dangerous. If there is a riot in your school, then the principal is demoted. What that means, and so many people want to be principals. So what you need, what happens now is, if I want to be principal, you organize a riot, then the principal will be demoted, and that comes in. You get power. So that is, should look at that action.
The authoritarian kind of leadership. Moses Kajwang.
Mike, look at the numbers. Matiang'i has given us some numbers. He says there have been 350 arson cases in the last 10 years. But 70 of them have occurred this year. So that means 20% have occurred in 1 year.
Right.
Well, he argues that last year, same time, about 98 cases had been reported. I agree with Weda that Matiang'i has been a catalyst to some of these things. There have been issues. There have always been issues. The things that the students are talking about are things that are deep-seated. They've been held for long. But young people always wait for a trigger. And I do think that the manner in which Matiang'i has gone about running the Ministry of Education with good intentions But the style is not different from the style that students are complaining about. If you looked at some of the causes why students are going on rampage, they say the administration is high-handed, they say they're being caned, they say they're not being allowed to watch matches, they say they're not being allowed to go for entertainment, and such like things. In fact, the common thread there is dictatorship. They're not being involved. They don't feel that they're being valued. And it is the same style that the Minister for Education is employing. I don't want to say is a root cause, but I want to make it clear that it could be the trigger. The causes are fundamental and there could be many. What do you expect in a society where to become a teacher, to join the TSC, you must bribe? That is a fact. You go, you study education, you go to a teacher training college, but for you to get into TSC, you must bribe. That is a fact that all Kenyans know. And I, as a leader, I know that. Because many young people come to me telling me, Mheshimiwa, I want to join TSC, but I've been told I have to provide some money. Could you please help me raise that money? And I tell them to burst, disappear, go to hell. I can't help you raise the money to bribe to get into government. That's the kind of situation we have. What do you expect in a society? Yes, and we are addressing it from that legislative perspective, but we are not going to contribute bribes for people to get into the education sector. What is our pedagogical philosophy as a nation? Is it just to churn people with good grades, or is it to mold people who are going to be leaders in future? And you asked what is the way forward. One, I agree with Sosion that this thing of extending the school term, again, was part of the triggers because it was a unilateral directive by Matiang'i. If you want to stop the fires, right now if you extend the school term to mid of August, these boys and girls are just going to ban school so that they attract attention. Two, that task force comprising of Kaiseri's boys and Matiang'i's boys needs to be relooked at so that other stakeholders can come in. Three, this business of telling parents to pay when their children have banned schools. Irungu Kangata has got a CDF with an emergency fund. What does he use that emergency fund for, if not for campaigns? The Uhuru Kenyatta has got an emergency fund, and it runs into billions. You cannot pass that blame to parents.
Can I, without passing any moral judgments to anybody, I had my sheikh say this when I was discussing with him, and I want to concur with him also to that extent. Weda here always talks about the values of a strong family. Before he talks about his kids very proudly, he talks about his family values very proudly. In America, Donald Trump is showcasing his family. Obama always showcases the family. It's a fundamental value in terms of how American politics is conceived or perceived. And that's the fundamental unit of order.
The family.
So, the family. It's the fundamental. That's why you have to show how you have been a great father or a great mother, that your family has come first. Of all the jobs that you have taken, you know, the one of being the father and a husband has been the most important job. You know, you hear your kids say these things. It's because he wants to inculcate a certain value system. Today, this single parentage thing, men and women must take responsibilities and provide stable family backgrounds for their kids. It's not this carelessness we're having across the country. I'm not saying that single mothers or single parents cannot take care of families, but it's important to provide a unit of family that is stable under the roof. And
it contributes to where we are as a society.
Some situations could be unfortunate, but it cannot be the norm rather than the exception. We need to have those strong institutions called family. Those are the first basis of as a regulator, as a social consciousness. And therefore, then it then ripples to the responsibilities of the society and government, but that fundamental issue. So whether when you're preaching in church, tell the young people there, not to constantly procreate. First build, get into marriages, get the unit, and get a kid, and then give the young lad the comfort and the stability of a home where the parents are inculcating values almost in equal measures. So that way, then it has its bearing on the overall makeup of society.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to wind it up right there. Time waits for no man, and we've not talked about IEBC. But anyway, Rome was not built in a day, so I'm sure next Monday is still coming, and we can have that discussion. But thank you very much, Senator Omar Hassan, Senator for Mombasa County, also the Secretary General for Wiper Movement, Irungu Kangata, Mheshimiwa Miwa, Honorable Irungu Kangata, a Member of Parliament for Kiharu constituency, thank you for coming. Senator Moses Kajwang, Senator Homa Bay, and last but not least, Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. That's where we're going to wind up the way it is, but do stay with us right here on Morning Express. We've got some news updates, and later on, we do have Robin Toskin with the sports news.